icebreakers are fun. Second icebreakers are also fun. And this is Mike's second icebreaker since he joined Toastmasters. Mike's speech this morning is titled, Slattery Family Day of Infamy. Sounds like you're not going to conceal anything. 4 to 6 minutes, please welcome Mike Slattery.
It was 27 days after the bombing of Pearl Harbor that I came down the chute. January 3rd, 1943. And when my father saw me, this little bundle of flesh with his little tiny hands moving in the air and his little feet squeezing back and forth, he looked at my mom and he said, Floss, I think this is going to be the Slattery Day of Infamy, as it was stated by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Well, you see, my father perhaps had a premonition at that time that I might be a bundle of problems, which I perhaps didn't turn out to be, in my opinion. My early education was at a Catholic grammar school where they taught more about discipline than they did about English, math, and science. And I can remember a number of times when I was asked to kneel down in front of the Virgin Mary and pray for forgiveness for talking rather than listening to the good nuns. Well, you see, perhaps back then in the 40s and 50s, I had ADD. But they didn't even know what it was back then. And I thank God they didn't. Because had they, today, I may be a drug addict rather than a collision technician and an insurance agent. But you see, when I was a little boy, I had this great passion for finding out how things worked. And I also loved to look at the hot rod magazines and see how they built cars and how they made them go faster and what they did to the motors and so on. Very important to me. So at age 12, I built a soapbox derby. And I was going to compete in our local race, which I did, and I came in second in my heat, which in reality means I was the first loser. So, I had future plans for that because I could not compete any longer in the soapbox derby. My father had just purchased a lawnmower, the rotary type, and we owned a lawnmower that was the real type, but it was motorized. So he took that lawnmower and put it in the back of the garage with the other tools that he didn't use. So one day I asked my dad, I said, hey, you have this motor on this lawnmower and it's just sitting here. Can I use it for my soapbox derby? He said, yeah, go right ahead. 2 days later, I was driving up and down my road with that motor pushing my soapbox derby. In fact, my parents were so impressed that my mother got in it and she drove it. Now I want to move forward to the 1980s, when my passion for racing and race cars had become too great. I made a decision at that time that I was going to build a race car and I was going to compete in NASCAR. It took 5 years for me to build a race car. And in that period of time, I learned so much of what it took to compete and to stay focused on what you wanted, or what I wanted, and what I needed to do to have people help me get to that goal. Well, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, I took the car to Saugus Speedway, which is no longer in business, and I went out for my test run. And unfortunately, at that time, going into turn 4, I crashed. But that was okay, because I still had the focus of what I wanted to do. We came back, fixed the car, and I competed the rest of the season. Now, I never won a race, really never even came close. But I had the satisfaction to know that I had completed what I wanted to do. And I think, unfortunately, because my parents never had a chance to see me build that car or even race, that my father, instead of saying, "This may be the Slattery family day of infamy," would have said, "This is the Slattery day of pride." Adam Toastman.